There you go. We on.
All right, we're on.
Oh yeah.
Jazz Cabbage Cafe. Okay, we're starting off a little light with the crew, but
Cabbage Cafe.
but such a quality core is here that we'll be okay no matter what happens. So this is like our 5th live broadcast, and keep on trying to get better every time. This week there wasn't as much prep because there was actually a lot of stuff going on. So, but we still got some good components down, and we're gonna roll out a good show. And there's a lot of stuff to talk about, and we have some good people coming on today with us. And
Jim looks like Jim Salame is joining us now. Got Derek Gauci.
Yep, got him. Yep, I was just checking the text for a second. I saw that he was coming on. I don't think we're gonna have Deborah or Shelly on today. They're both busy, so we'll have to fill in a little bit for some people not around. But John Schlicker, I believe, will be joining us as kind of a co-host today. Plus, we'll interview him a little bit too.
That's great.
We have lots of stuff. There was a weird, I shouldn't say weird, only to my perspective, a bill introduced by a Democrat with no co-sponsors to open up the MRTMA, which requires a supermajority vote, which is 75%, which would add funding to go to organizations to help prevent police suicides on top of the veterans that is already included in that law. So we don't think that one's going anywhere, but we'll talk about it a little bit and what's going on with it. And it's not like it's not a good cause, but it's also something that doesn't really need to be changed. Maybe that issue should be addressed in a different way, and we'll get to that. There was a Supreme Court ruling that everybody's talking about that has to do with the ability of townships and cities to do certain types of ordinances that we had thought for years were overly restrictive, and thought that we'd already won some of this stuff in the Supreme Court. So that now has opened a lot of people's eyes and created a scenario where each ordinance would have to be challenged almost independently to find out if it's reasonable or not. But we'll
regulating
talk about
caregivers is what you're talking about.
Right,
Regulating
yeah,
caregivers on a municipal level.
Yep. And we went through this like over the last few years already. We thought we had some kind of resolution, but we're going to talk about that in depthly. And a lot of us have looked at it and have a feel for what's going on. There's been some discussions, but we have Allen Peisner chiming in with us a little bit, who is an attorney who's scoped it over a little bit and is prepared to have the discussion with us on it. So we'll do that. We also have Rhory Gould with us today, who is the principal in Arborside in Ann Arbor. And he was a sponsor for Digital Hash Bash, and he didn't make it on or get a video in, but we'll talk to him about that a little bit. And John Schlicker will be a co-host, and we'll talk to him a little bit about that too. And I think we have the Canapalooza video that will run right at 4:20, so I can step out and take a couple of hits.
And let's not forget, we kind of skipped over introductions real quick. Host Jamie Lowell right over there. Jamie J. Lowe, the guy who's responsible for everything.
Yep. And let me cut in because we didn't skip over it. I just didn't get to it yet. What I would like to do,
you started introducing people, then you started talking about subjects. So
those are subjects that we're going to get to later on in the show, but we weren't having the discussion yet. But also want to continue our COVID conversation. We seem to have it quite a bit, and there's this debate about lives versus livelihood, meaning at some point is there a point in which we abandon waiting for the science and all the tests that are necessary and the data to show us that things are safe, and not allow things to go so far so as to really destroy the economy and create severe poverty, and then possibly add on the problems that scenario may bring, and mortality rates and all that kind of stuff. So is there a line? And I kind of like the people, to get into it too in depthly or take a huge position on it or anything like that. But when we do introduce people, I'm just wondering if somebody could address, do you think that there's, in this discussion, is there a line for you at some point that you allow people to go out and take the risk against the science for the pandemic versus getting the economy going to avoid the major issues that could happen in a severe depression and creating severe poverty for people? So that's the debate. And just like for people to weigh in on it briefly, and we'll get into a broader discussion on it later on. But Rick, if you want to go ahead and continue with introductions, because you were doing a perfect job.
No, look,
starting.
Clearly, we got Jim Salame, who's joined us. Jim Salame, many different credits: Decriminalized Nature, Ann Arbor, also Ohm of Medicine. Jim's here.
Hi, everybody.
Hey, Jim, so what do you think, man?
And of
Well,
course, we have
it's a tough question because, you want the economy obviously to be booming or to get back on track somehow. And it's tough to do that because we just don't know. It seems like it's still in such an early stage. It's hard to even say. I'm for allowing businesses to figure out how to manage people from their storefronts. And I think that we as Americans can figure out how to do that. But I still am down with the current lockdown that we have. I'm not saying that we should lift that at all, but I do think that we should start looking at different ways that we can incorporate businesses in safety measures.
Cool. So you kind of stick with what we're doing, keep an eye on the science and gradually bring activity back in.
Yeah, I think by the middle of
and
May,
responsibly, right? Okay.
To do that. But I don't, again, I don't know. It's so
No, but
crazy.
nobody, I don't think really does. This is all being done on the fly pretty much. So,
but Derek Gauci here, Derek's a family man, got young kids. He's a small business. He's an entrepreneur. He's directly affected by the crisis. A man who has a photography career who saw quite a bit of his business disappear as a result of the crisis. Derek, Jamie's question to you: what do you think? Science versus restoration?
I mean, really, it's a hard, it's a place that we've never been, and I'm trying to navigate uncharted waters. That's for sure. It's a legendary day today where we had 5 cancellations for weddings, literally 5 different cancellations. It was the biggest day of them all. I think it kind of takes every 2 weeks for people. Everybody's trying to stumble along and trying to decide for themselves how they should personally manage it. The bottom line is there's just going to be some companies like mine that are going to have a hard trail at coming back. We can't serve people on the curbside. We shoot events that are normally 100 to 300 people. So what we're relying on is people to have sense and kind of plan their events differently.
Right. Well,
more sexy.
sure. That to me is still kind
more
of part
sexy.
part of the slow rollout that can be incorporated and still doing what we're doing.
Right. Yep. But the bottom line is, our business is definitely affected from it major. And I would hate to see us jump into it too early and get anybody more sick. So.
Right. Well, Colin MacDougall, you're actually a frontline worker in the dispensary industry. You're a retail store environment guy. You would potentially see 100 people a day. You're not at this particular time working at Bloom, but you could have been. Certainly, you look like you'd be one of those people exposed on the front line if we return back to work. Colin MacDougall, see murder. What do you think, bud?
Yeah, I think that, like Deb said, we shouldn't believe what the president says, and obviously a danger to us. Mike Pence, he went to a clinic today without a mask where there were coronavirus patients. I don't know, it seems like everything that's going on just doesn't make sense. I know I feel for people like Derek, businesses that rely on large events, and businesses dispensaries where 100 plus people. I would say actually it's probably 250 plus people a day at least come through those places. So I mean, I don't want to have us to face another curve. Be like, oh well, that was the first curve, and now we've gone back too early, and the curve goes even higher. So I just feel that we should continue social distancing and shelter in place. I'd like to smoke with you guys for sure, but we can't right now.
Jamie, you want to go next, or would you?
Well, sure. Just briefly.
Virtually.
Yeah, we will do some of that, and then when we get to the other side, we'll hang out a few feet apart together, smoke some our own joints. But I understand this surface argument that at some point you push things so far that you create more really serious problems also. And maybe there's a balance, but I guess I'm fine with that, but I still like to rely on the people on the front lines with expertise, making conclusions based on the data. And if they say, hey, even though it's not fully ready yet, there is this line here. There are people who are touting the herd immunity type thing in order to do something before the vaccine comes around, and what exactly what that means, like 60% of the population has to be touched by it at some point, or something like that. I'm not an expert on that. Talk about that a little bit, know more maybe what we've read on it and stuff, but I don't want to like try to talk as if I know anything about that. It just seems to me like we save the lives and then we figure out a different way to keep the people from going into severe poverty. That might sound naive, but that just seems like that should be our focus. And if we really can't do it, then maybe look at being really careful about how you bring it out, really protecting the sick people and the elderly people, and being smart about how people come back into functioning and that type of stuff. But it also seems to me that's what's going on now. So I'm concerned that it might be an argument to try to force the issue a little bit. But again, I really don't know. What do you think, Rick?
Well, it's important for people that are listening to know Jamie actually lives in the
You cut out, Rick.
Yeah, you're breaking up a little bit.
Detroit, where it's the epicenter, one of the real hot spots in the United States of America. There's community. I'm breaking up a little bit. I'm sorry. I'm just going to keep.
Yeah, you're saying I live in a heavy area for this.
So
pandemic.
that's an interesting perspective from someone who's that close to danger, right? Here's versus common sense. Our definition of science is fluid. The way that we know things and how much we know about this virus, it changes all the time. So there'll always be a small group of people that will say science is there, we're done. There'll always be a small group of people that say we don't know enough yet. The leaders that imposed restrictions upon us are the only ones that can alleviate us from them.
Wow. It is freezing up a lot, but he gets a few words in here and there, and we get the idea of what he's trying to say.
I was going to say really quick that I think looking to other countries too, and finding what other countries are seeing with their progress and how they've done it, because I think we're a little behind some of these countries.
I guess Italy, only time will tell whether they made wise decisions or not.
Sorry. No, that's true, Rick. You were frozen for most of that. You came back in and said, time will tell. And I think that's the one safe answer that we have here. Like, we'll see what the deal is at some point. We'll have enough tests. We'll have enough activity that took place, all the combination of things, and we'll see the end result. You might want, if it's still not working, you may want to go out and come back in, possibly see if that works. But I agree with that. I mean, there's a level of expertise out there, and this is just from my perspective. There is this body of scientists and body of experts, and they're coming up with certain conclusions based on the numbers and the data that they're getting and things, and kind of making suggestions, and that gets to the leadership, and the leadership, use that. It's probably not that straightforward. There's probably political shit in there. We have every reason not to trust government from our experiences and stuff like that, but just assuming they basically take the advice, from the people who know what they're talking about, and then make the decisions based on that. I think if the idea, there's these individuals that will get on and will be a credible doctor or scientist in some regard. In fact, I had a conversation with a veterinarian yesterday who likes the herd immunity idea. But those guys come on and they make their case and it sounds convincing, and then people start saying, yeah, that's what we should do. But I just think if that case is that convincing, then the same experts who are evaluating, are in consulting on what we do, will take that into consideration. It'll make sense to them too. And that maybe becomes part of the plan. It gets folded in because it makes sense. And if it doesn't, I'm still trusting, even though I don't claim that aren't political shenanigans going on, I'm sure there are, but I'm stuck with looking toward the science as the guide and our leadership to utilize that for decision making. We're kind of vulnerable right now under these circumstances, and I don't yet feel like the government's taking away all my rights or anything. I kind of think it's important that we do what we're doing under the circumstances. So I'm personally okay, but I can understand how people flip out over not trusting the government. We've had a lot of experience with that. This is just such a unique situation, as many people have said. So, John, Rick, did you make it back with us?
I am back. Am I back with you?
Yeah.
Sounds good.
Sounds great.
So what I was saying before was really science is fluid.
We're laughing at you, Rick.
We knew in
I think your roach clip is magnetic.
January is different than March. Good stuff, man.
Yeah. Fuck yeah.
That was some good stuff. It's an electronica language kind of. So we should be joined by Schlicker pretty soon, and in absence of a couple people today, he's going to hang out and guest host with us, and we'll talk to him a little bit too.
I'm sure you guys did. Hopefully the entire state caught it, but I'm sure everybody caught the SNL skit about Gretchen, but even better, her response.
Her response was cool because they were drinking like Labatt's or something, and she's like, "You got the wrong beer," and she had like a Bell's Brewery. Yeah.
Was it a two-hearted ale?
It was a two-hearted.
Yeah, it was two-hearted.
So
yeah,
that's the shit I used to drink a lot of that, man. There was this stuff called Soul Sun.
Yeah.
And it turned into Oberon, I think, eventually, because the name had been used. Yeah. And so I used to love, I mean, I haven't had a drink in years, but I used to love that shit.
They should have had her smoking a doobie.
Should have.
So they also used in the skit, they showed a picture of the protest from, a couple weeks ago or whatever, and called it a Ted Nugent cosplay.
That's hilarious. That was hilarious.
Oh, speaking of that, there is people saying that they are going to do another one of these on April 30th. There was a small group there today. Senator Irwin had to be at the Capitol, and he sent a picture of it. There's like 12 of them. They are keeping a certain distance and stuff like that. So probably not causing a whole lot of harm. Not necessary or not smart, in my humble opinion, but probably not causing as much harm as the thousands of people who are slobbering on each other, passing a mic around.
Did you say there were 12 people at this protest?
At the one today, 12 to 20 maybe, depending on how many got in the picture. Not many. Very, very small group. Couple of signs. They looked like they were practicing some distancing. Not that I condone it because there's distancing, but that's better than if they were huddling up together.
Like if they're practicing distancing, then what? I don't even get it. What's the message? It's kind of mixed there.
Well, I think a lot of people, some people, think that Gretchen's been doing a great job, but pushed it a little bit too far with the last one of the box stores not being able to use the garden center or the paint section and that kind of stuff. Just go in there and get your groceries. It was a little bit more strict about being able to travel from one of your homes to like your vacation home up north and those types of things. And that was during a crunch time when obviously she wanted to do more things to keep less interactions for a few more days taking place. Those things have now been lifted, but I think that's all that was about. But many people just went, that's too much. You've already done a lot and maybe this thing's going on, but now you're really starting to dig into my rights. And I don't dig that. And I don't trust government, and I'm not okay with it. I'm not just letting it go. And so there we are.
Yeah,
well, we have one more
Jamie.
minute to. Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, I agree with you, Jamie, because she threw caution to the wind as opposed to kind of blowing it off like some of the leadership did.
Yeah, and it was lifted after a few days, and they didn't want to take credit like it did. No, it was an extra strict kind of a measure to keep activity down at a crunch time, and maybe it rubbed some people the wrong way, but that's what it was about. Not about arbitrarily just deciding to take some rights away and using this as an opportunity. I don't get that one at all. I don't see Gretchen as the type of leader that would do that. I'm understanding of people who don't trust government though, so I can see why somebody would.
I'll tell you that.
It's almost 4:20.
Let's play that video. Let's take a small break, and then Rick comes back and discusses this, and then we'll start moving into some other stuff.
Sweet. I'm going to get it going.
This is for John. Hopefully John joins us here soon, too. This is John's organization with Nikki and so many others.
Oh my God, knows I shy. But the girls outside, but I never tried to. Even with a long time coming, but I dreamed of something. One big family, that parishioners, nowhere wild places, but our faces through the sun with dancing. Yeah, we are the parishioners. Wildflowers, baby, God, you're in love. One we are in color. Oh, God, a little black and loving.
Hey. Hey.
Hey.
Wildflowers, baby, we are different, you know, but we are a color for target, a nymph and nothing. We are a match, no target.
Get a Dead Kennedy's hat on.
Oh, and what good timing.
Shelly back.
I believe
And
he's
John.
actually here, John Schlickler himself.
Nice. Perfect timing. Hey, John, you got to turn your mic, unmute your mic, it looks like.
No, he's good. Let me
Oh, he
see.
is? Okay. All right. I
Oh,
said
we
it
can
looks
hear
like.
him. Yeah,
Wasn't giving him total shit yet. You there, John?
it's not muted.
Hey, John, what do you got, man?
There's
There
no
she
his mic's not on. There's no mic there at all.
Hey, John, you got to turn your audio on, man.
So anyway, that video came straight from Canapalooza up there at Hubbard Lake last year.
It looks like it. Yeah, and there's a longer version of it, too. That's really cool. That was shortened for Hash Bash.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
And
There's
Shelly.
Shelly. Shelly's essential because she's going around and supporting essential workers by giving them masks. She has a mask on herself. It's a beautiful lavender, it looks like. An example of how it
Yeah,
covers.
but I'm outside on a walk, so it's just hanging out.
Cool. Here, John's connecting to audio now.
Is that on now?
Yeah.
Hey, there you are, big man. All right. We just played the Canapalooza video.
Yeah,
And,
I just seen that. Thank you.
Yep. All right. So, hey, John, you're John Schlicker, Canapalooza Worldwide and Northeast Michigan Normal. Hung out on Planet Green Trees last Thursday like this. He's going to hang out with us today and kind of co-host. Deb's not here for a while. Shelly wasn't here.
Shelly, are you on Pearl and Hamilton?
We had some shoes to fill. And are you right by
Yeah.
Oz?
Yeah, I'm right across from Oz. This is my
Nice.
normal little walking route.
Nice.
Oh, yep.
There it
It
is.
is.
Yes.
And it is not actually in the historic district, but it's influenced by the historic district. So the building has to follow all the historic district codes. 'Cause one time Daryl put some siding on there, some aluminum siding or something, and they made him tear it all down and put down stuff that was up to the standard of its historical area. or
That's what
whatever.
I think. That's what I think of when I picture this corner is high standards.
That somebody privately, some company is buying that. That's the currently behind Shelly is the business school at Eastern Michigan University. And that is being purchased by a company. What it will be, I don't know, but it's not going to be part of the university anymore.
Wow.
Really? I didn't know that.
I didn't either.
Hey, neither did I.
So Rick's not with us at the moment, it appears, or is he?
Oh, take a break.
Okay. Hopefully he slides back on. But Shelly, if you'd like to to comment briefly, we're asking people about lives versus livelihood, and if there's a point at which we don't continue to just follow the science and we get stuff started again so that we don't reach severe economic and poverty conditions. Is there a point in which you would abandon the science and just start opening stuff up again?
Well, I think since we really don't know what we're talking about, probably, that at some point, part of the scientific experiment is going to be 1-on-1, 1-on-4, 1 to 10.
Hey, we're talking about the
sick,
pandemic now. If you could keep those kind of thoughts to a different show later on, I appreciate it.
Right. Oh boy. Well, I'm just thinking Sweden is an experiment right now. They haven't really done any kind of social distancing. And Georgia and, there's beaches. There is a scientific experiment going on right now. And I feel like there's too much data. If anybody was listening to Michigan radio today, there was a great book that we should do for Reason Weed. It's called Home Baked, about a woman whose mother, not Brownie Mary, but another lady, during the AIDS epidemic, she baked brownies for AIDS patients. Anyway, and I was just thinking about the beginning of that epidemic when we didn't know, it was called gay cancer, and people wouldn't touch them. Brownie Mary would touch them, right? But we didn't know what we were dealing with for so long. And somebody's going to we're going to be like a mini-year scientific experiment. We're in the grocery stores already. We're touching boxes of macaroni and cheese. We're touching the gas pump handle.
But we are, theoretically, we should be, after touching anything, washing hands a lot and not touching face after touching anything, and washing shit off before, all that kind of stuff. And that's part of the new normal, part of the new world, I think.
Well, sure. But truly, if you've ever been in the service industry, that was pretty much your life. You washed your hands 500 times a day if you've ever worked in a kitchen or waited tables or been a nurse or,
Hopefully, I'm aware of some
I would
didn't
hope
necessarily
so.
take those extra steps, but yeah.
Yeah, of course. That's why there's signs everywhere. But I just think that's always been a good idea. My fingernails stay short because I have a very bad fingernail.
What do you think about the mask thing is going to be kind of a continued thing for a lot of people too, and a kind of a standard.
The mask thing is going to be a while, Jamie.
It's going to be a while. It's going to be a while because even a couple of years ago when there was a really bad flu, regular flu, I guess, or some version of the flu, I wore masks on planes and in crowded places just because I usually, no matter what's going on, get a little something on a plane, or if you're in a really crowded thrift store, the first time you go out after the winter and there's allergies and people and, it's always a good idea to protect yourself.
And they've been doing it in Japan for a while on a common basis. A lot of people.
Yeah, it's common. It's not that super duper uncommon in the world to cover your face to protect yourself in a crowded place.
Right. So
not super weird. It's weird for us.
Right. Well, it's a new part of our new normal, probably. So, John, you just mentioned you agree that we're talking about masks for a while. Do you see a time where we just start opening stuff up again because it's getting too deeply difficult for the economy and severe poverty and all those problems?
And what's it like up north? What do people up there think?
People are wearing masks out in public. Probably 60% of them. Maybe even more than that now. They're doing pretty good about social distancing.
Good. And so do you think there's a time before the science kind of gives us the all clear, there's enough tests and the data seems to be comfortable for the experts? Do we abandon that at any point and just try to get the economy going again because we're going too deep? You're getting too deep? John? All right.
It's too big of a question. Too big.
He's still processing.
You shocked him.
So Rick, you were going in this direction before you had to reboot and come back on. Why don't you pick up on this, and then in a little bit we'll switch to the Supreme Court decision. But you were still talking about it, and hopefully you have a better connection now. Yeah.
No, obviously I'm just messing around. So I think maybe I do have a better internet connection now, but really what we're talking about is
What the hell?
science is
now.
subjective. Remember, there'll always be a small percentage of people that can't move. Am I really bad again, or what?
When you are not talking about what you want to say, it sounds good. When you actually start getting into the subject matter, it sounds fine.
That's true. You're being like censored by Zoom robots.
Think of all the information you could have gotten if you weren't playing around in the beginning of this. Are you at your home now, Shelly?
Yep.
Cool.
Well, I thought I was going to be on a super tight schedule today and be making a lot of phone calls, and then it got really nice outside, and that felt very important to go be outside. So I'll have to ditch out in a minute and go make phone calls. Okay. But I wanted to see you guys.
I was outside for a while today. And in fact, speaking of that, a lot of people, do believe that if, of course, with proper distancing and safe scenarios and stuff like that, if more people can kind of get outside and get some sun and that kind of stuff, we may better position ourselves with some immune and some relaxation or whatever, all the positive things we can get from that experience, especially after going through, a winter.
So
and stuff like that.
Here's an invitation for you guys, because I just walked through Riverside Park, and very much social distancing, respectful. But if you guys want to microdose, hook up some hammocks in Riverside Park with a little speaker and some juice, and you want to hang out and chat, hammock 6 feet apart, I'm down. So let
Next
me
week's
know.
show.
Safely distanced hammock party.
Yeah, or just
Nice.
sitting around on blankets. You know what I mean? I was just in the park and realizing oh, okay. There's two people kayaking. There's, it's
when Derek was talking,
lovely.
I was envisioning like a banquet hall where every other table is open, and then there's every other chair is then open. So there's always, well, when he says that they have to come up with different ways to do this and make people feel comfortable, that's the kind of thing that I'm seeing. So Shelly's describing a different way of hanging out in a public park. I kind of see those events being like that. John, are you back with us? Well, he can be seen and his presence is felt, that's for sure. So whether or not there's a lot of actual interaction, we'll take that. So at about 4:45 or so, Allen Peisner will come on, and we'll talk more about this most recent Supreme Court decision about how it works with local ordinances and where people can grow under the MMA. And this most recent one seems to be a reversal of the previous decisions. Seems to be. We'll get some of the details, with Allen and talk about that a little bit more. But that'll be something. Hey, John, are you able to talk back at me, knowing that I'm talking to you right now?
Okay.
There you go.
Can you hear me, Jamie?
Yeah, man. Yeah.
All right. I don't know. I get a lot of echo and feedback here. I'm trying to figure out if I can change that, and I thought maybe I lost you, but
no, you maybe turn down the volume a little bit and try to use headphones if you possibly can, even like earbuds or something.
Yeah,
helps out a little bit.
I feed my computer through my phone.
So you know what? While we're waiting I think Rick's trying to reboot again and come back in with a better connection. I hope that works out. Maybe it's a bad day for
his phone.
Or just jump over to the phone or other device. He's got, tablet, laptop, desktop, phone, something.
He's got his phone waving in front of us, so.
There's an obvious one, so they should do that. But there was a bill recently introduced. I can't think of the representative's name. I remember he's a Democrat, and that there's no co-sponsors. If anybody has if anybody has that information, we could throw that in there, but not that incredibly important. But it's a
Is it Betty? Is it in the Senate or
I
is it
gotta
in the
get my
House?
kids over here to help me get this figured out, but they're all afraid to come on the show with me, so.
that's fine. So it'll work out, man. You sound good. You look good. You know, there's a couple small things probably to make it go a little bit better. But the what it would do, sorry, I'm trying to get Alan on here. What it would do is open up the MRTMA, which requires 75% of the Senate and the House to do. It's a super majority vote because it was based on a people's initiative. It was petitioned for, put on the ballot, and it passed. And in order to change that or to make any amendments, the legislature requires a supermajority vote. So the chances of everybody going along with it are probably not that great. But to me, and what it would do is it would extend out the period of time that money goes to veterans research and PTSD out to 2023 and add funding for, I'm not sure if it's a specific organization, but organizations that deal with preventing police suicides. And it would then also designate the money only for a Michigan-based operation. And there is some national stuff going on, some research that's already underway. Dr. Sue Sicily, we've had her in Michigan a few times, obviously at Hash Bash, and as part of some really awesome seminars. You know, Jim was probably a part of getting some of those going. And
I love her. Yeah, she's amazing.
And so some of that money could go to her and really benefit research that's already underway and not have to like specifically find a Michigan organization that wants to come out and start this with the funding. I mean, it would just make sense to try to get some good work done and help out what's already been anyway. So you know what, Alan's here. Since he's already here, I say we bring him on and we start talking about some of this stuff. He's familiar with this also. He just chatted us all a link to the bill that we're talking about right now. And maybe we'll start off talking about that and get into the Supreme Court decision that we were referencing right now. So I think, Alan, you might need to unmute your mic, man, but let me introduce you to people here. Are you there?
Yes.
There he is. So yeah, you as a lot of people are now fairly comfortable with using Zoom and using it for a lot of different things. And we've had that discussion a few times too. Probably will after all this is over with. It's provided a lot of ease of doing things, you know, and the technology's been there for a long time, but this whole situation has kind of forced the issue a little bit. I think it's now going to be a lot more common. But obviously, Alan's with
Alan.
One advantage of Zoom is I could actually put that bill up on the screen if you haven't disabled screen share for your participants, and it's actually something you have to turn off. I don't know. Should I try?
Well, if you'd like to, it's not that incredibly important to me. I'd rather look at your face, actually, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And so would Shelly. I can tell by the way she's leaning into the camera a little bit.
All right.
So.
Well, anyway, just real quickly to show you I can do it, and then I'm going to turn it off.
No problem.
So I can scroll through that, and if we want to refer to anything, we can.
So it was Representative Tate. We needed to get that information. I didn't have that before, so that's very good. I appreciate that. And if I remember, it was House Bill 5740. Is that what you just put up there?
Yeah, I'd have to do that again.
Okay, fine. Hey, we'll test my horrible memory against.
Okay, here we go.
Technology.
Coming back up again. Yeah, House Bill 5740. Correct.
Okay, perfect. And I guess like I don't see the need for it. I'm not against people trying to help police not commit suicide. I mean, that's fair, I guess, thing to be involved in. But it did not include that kind of stuff on purpose. It was written to help out the veterans under these circumstances, and that's what it should just stay as. And it's always scary whenever somebody attempts to try to open up, you know, the people's law. At that point, you know, people can slide all types of weird stuff in there, and we start peeling it back or hurting our individual rights or making it easier for the big businesses to take over, whatever it is.
I agree.
Yep.
The problem is it takes a 3/4 vote of the legislature to do any amendment to the Medical Marijuana Act. And in order to do that, compromises have to be made, and often the compromises are not good. For example, the original Medical Marijuana Act had a really bad typo in it that prevented many people from claiming the Section 8 defense. And when they fixed that typo with Senate Bill 660, which took effect in 2013, they added the definition of the physician-patient relationship, and that included the in-person medical evaluation. And because of that physician-patient relationship definition, many people have still been denied the Section 8 defense. So it's a no-win situation when we amend it. And I agree, we do need to stick with the original language of the voters, and this bill is just, it's really not necessary. The only reason why they want to amend the definitions is if somehow when we voted in 2018 for MRTMA, we excluded resin from the definition of marijuana, and they want to correct that. I don't see a problem with that personally. I don't think that's a definition that needs being corrected, but that happened.
Well, while some of it might be acceptable or not be an issue or something like that, there are other components that could be significant. To stay away from it and kind of deal with what we have right now, I prefer as well, if that's what you're saying. You know, Alan, I didn't really introduce you that well, and you're on here with the Cabbage crew. I don't know if you can see everybody or know everyone when you came on, but Alan is an attorney, and I know that you are retired-ish, like you're with Comore Law and still do some stuff, but you're not necessarily working full time these days, but you have been like keeping an eye on all of these court rulings as they affect cannabis and other related, topics, and working on some stuff. And I'll just tell people now, I didn't get the opportunity to afterward, a few months ago, but I needed some help up in Bay City from an attorney from a legal perspective, and through Michael and Comore Law. Alan was the guy, and came in and kicked ass for me with just a few phone calls. So I never got a chance to properly publicly thank you for that, Alan, but thank you very much.
It was my pleasure. Yes, I'm an attorney. I've been attorney for 31 years in May, and I'm no longer practicing full time, but I try to read every new opinion that comes out of the Michigan courts and the Sixth Circuit in Cincinnati, which handles the appeals from the federal district courts. And then also some of the lower level court opinions I read, and I keep them in my library. And one in particular that comes to mind when we talk about this DeRuyter case, I don't know if this is a good segue or not, if I could go into that.
I'd like to hold off just for a second on it and get you caught up with us, because we are asking everybody, and if there's anything more to say about this bill, that's fine too.
No.
But I wanted to ask you, after you're done telling everybody what you want to know about yourself, a question, but go ahead.
Go ahead. No, that's pretty much it. I'm an attorney that practices criminal defense and medical marijuana law, and I work with Comore Law.
Yeah, and often on Planet Green Trees on Thursday nights, 8 to 10, where Comore is the host, and many of us are on there also, and those are really good shows, and we should be watching that Thursday, 8 to 10. So just briefly, we don't have to get into a huge discussion about it. We've all kind of like taken a stab at it for a minute or so, but there is this debate about lives versus livelihood, and I guess the headline is essentially, do you at some point, before the science and all the testing is available and the experts have concluded from the data that things are ready to go, some people are suggesting before we get to that point, we purposely go take the risk and open things back up to prevent other issues from a severe depression and poverty and all of the issues that go along with that. Is there a point for you?
I think we're ready for that now. We all make our own personal decisions. I know that I probably am more vulnerable. I'm getting up there in the years, and I wouldn't go into a place where the people are real crowded together. But I think younger people are free to make that decision for themselves. And I think we're adults, and just like we made the decision to smoke cannabis maybe 30 years ago or more, and we're never quitters, even though that could have caused problems with numerous problems, aside problems with the law. And I think this is the same sort of situation. I think we're adults, and I think we're entitled to make informed decisions.
Okay. Very cool. So let's get into the case a little bit. If you want to give us the background on that and generally what it means. I know it seems like we had a couple of decisions from the Supreme Court that are contradictory to this one. I don't know if that's necessarily true. Turbeek, for example.
Hey, Jamie, maybe I
Yep.
missed it, but you've referenced the Supreme Court thing, but exactly what is it? Maybe it was right at the top of the show, but when
Well,
you popped it up on the screen, I wasn't
No, that's a
quite
different,
sure.
that was a bill that was introduced that would open up the
Hey,
MRTMA.
let me get her that.
Yeah.
I can bring that up
Just,
relatively.
I
Sure.
just wanted to more like exactly what was that he put up on the screen,
Yeah,
and then
it
what
was-
is the Supreme Court decision that you?
No.
I just
Well,
define it for me.
Alan's just about ready to give the overview of the Supreme Court decision. And
Oh, okay.
All right,
Yep.
I just posted that for Shelly's benefit, but I should also add for the people listening in Facebook, I posted that same link to the Supreme Court opinion. It starts off public.courts.michigan.gov. It's a real long opinion and ends up with 71-01.pdf. Anyway, if you click on that link, that will bring up the latest DeRuyter opinion from the Michigan Supreme Court if you want to follow it home.
there you go. Thank you very much. It looks like Rick made it back on with us, or is trying to using his phone now. So we'll have him here in a minute. But yeah, please, Alan, now's the time. Go over that case and let us know what the deal is.
All right. Well, this was a case where Christy DeRuyter was growing in a commercially zoned area. She had a warehouse, in other words, in a business district. And the problem was that Byron Township had an ordinance that said that caregivers could only grow in their residences. So they tried to stop her. And actually, she took the aggressive step of being the plaintiff in suing the township to get an injunction claiming that or properly asserting that this ordinance requiring her to grow at home was in violation of the Medical Marijuana Act, and the trial court agreed with her, and so did the Court of Appeals. But the Michigan Supreme Court did not. They reversed, and they said that as long as the local ordinance does not conflict or preempt or prohibit or provide unreasonable regulations, these local ordinances can coexist with the Medical Marijuana Act. And they really went a lot further here than they had to. All they were asked to do was just decide whether a local ordinance which said that caregivers had to grow in residences and were barred from commercial districts, whether that violated the Medical Marijuana Act. And they went a lot further, and they talked about preemption in general and what is preempted and what is not. And they pretty much opened the door here, I'm afraid to say. They left some minor arguments saying that the ordinance was not conflict preempted in this state, but we could still argue the issue of field preemption, which is the individual specific aspects of it. I think that what's going to happen now is when this case goes back for Mr. Reuter and the trial court has to decide it, well, they already decided for her once, and they were even presented with this issue with both conflict preemption and field preemption, and they only decided on conflict preemption. But I think she's going to win. My concern is that other jurisdictions are going to start enforcing their ordinances. Many of jurisdictions already have caregiver ordinances on the books right now, and they're not being enforced. But they're very bad. For example, in Southfield, we have a zoning ordinance that requires caregivers to grow within specifically zoned designated areas. And the last time I checked, there was only 4 open places for a city with 70,000 people. So that clearly, in my opinion, would not stand muster, is because it prevents.
Not reasonable.
Right, it's not reasonable.
Right.
But what my fear is what they're going to do is try and craft reasonable ordinances. And I've got nightmares on a whole bunch of them. And I don't really want to even state them in this format for giving the wrong people ideas.
Sure.
I could tell you privately my bad dreams of what would stand muster here for this, but I hate to think that, like I say, this is out on Facebook. This is a public thing, and they could really make things bad for caregivers. And I don't want
I'm sure some places who really still don't like any of this type of activity will probably choose to do that. And other places now probably going to continue to be okay with it.
Well, there was places like Ferndale, for example, Ypsilanti, Ann Arbor, that are more cannabis friendly. Mm-hmm. This decision specifically was decided on the Medical Marijuana Act, so it's limited to caregivers. My concern is that cities will try and expound on this and impose other regulations that'll be restrictive on both the MMFLA licenses and on MERTMA. But I don't want to go into specifics. Like I said, I'll talk to you privately. I'll talk to any person I know in the a business that I know is an advocate
So-
on our side privately about it, but I'm
Sure, but you just mentioned something that, just to clarify, you just mentioned MERTMA. This case was about the MMMA, right? But does it have implications for MERTMA? Is that what you're suggesting?
they specifically excluded MERTMA in their decision, having no bearing on it. But in reality, it probably does.
Okay.
So it's a really bad decision. And
And we kind of like have liked this particular composition of the Supreme Court.
in the past,
Right.
they've always done the right thing. And
Yeah.
the Court of Appeals has gotten it wrong many times. This is a weird situation where the Court of Appeals got it right and the Supreme Court did not.
And it was unanimous by people who we generally liked. So that's makes it even a little bit more
yeah,
confusing. But
I need to watch the oral arguments on this, and I apologize for not having a chance to do this before right now, but I think the oral arguments clued people in that they knew from that was the way this case was going to go. And it's my understanding the attorneys for DeRuyter dropped the ball at the oral argument. I'm not sure.
so does this in effect then reverse Turbeek?
It sure limits it. It doesn't reverse it. They expressly mentioned Turbeek in the opinion. So, and if they wanted to reverse it, they could have said, yes, we reversed Turbeek, but they didn't say that in the opinion. What they said is it's limited, or it modifies it to say that when an ordinance does not completely prohibit what the MMMA allows, then it may still be allowed if it's reasonable.
So Rick has joined us back again. Rick, you've got some thoughts on this. Anything in particular to chime in on what Alan is saying or about it at large? Or are we stuck again? Oh man, I think he changed devices and to make it work. There you go. Rick,
He's
are you with
moving.
us? He's hitting the joint.
You know what? His audio is not connected. Rick, click on the button, the lower left-hand corner next to the mute button. You'll see.
He might not know I was talking
Yeah.
to him. He may not have
Yeah.
known that I was addressing him to come in on the conversation. But you there?
He
Rick?
needs to connect his audio. Next to the mute button, there's an up arrow, and if you click on that, he can click on select the speaker or select the microphone. But he can't. Maybe he can't even hear any of this. But I think he disconnected his own audio.
Can you hear us, Rick?
Good, Jamie?
There we go.
James?
Oh well. Oh, what do you got, John? Sorry. Little tripped up trying to bring Rick in on it a little bit, but so
I keep getting double feedback. I hear over and over what's going. I don't know.
well again that's where I think using a headphone sometimes helps out, so that it's not the speaker just doesn't then get caught by what's coming out of the speaker get caught by the mic again. So if you have headphones, you kind of stop that loop and it helps out a little bit. So maybe try that out. And
Sometimes people will
a lot of
play
people.
Facebook too, and Facebook, if it's playing in the background, can be kind of.
Oh, sure, yeah. If you're playing also the Facebook Live broadcast at the same time. Now, Rick is connecting to audio, and he will officially be able to jump in on the conversation. And I think Shelly has left us, and we didn't say before when she came on. She's with the Michigan Cannabis Industry Association, and she has been going around and bringing masks to many businesses who can use them in support. And just wanted to mention that, and all essential workers again. Much respect and appreciation for what you do. Rick, do you have some input on this Supreme Court decision? Oh, just have to unmute your mic.
Got it. How's that?
Perfect.
All right. I joined with my telephone instead of my laptop because the phone is more reliable, apparently.
We'll see.
When it comes down to it, Michigan Supreme Court obviously the ability to overrule and I take it this is not working again, right?
It does right this second. As soon as you're not talking about the subject matter, it seems to come back on for some reason. You got it now. You got it now, man. Go for it. I can feel it.
Yeah, you can feel it. Right. Okay. So Supreme Court can obviously overrule those lower courts, but it's inconsistent to the people to do something like this. The other thing is the Supreme Court seemed to have given themselves a big out by saying that they didn't rule aspect of it's very important to us, whether or not this conflict with the medical marijuana law of 2008. So it disappoints me to see this rule, especially since we've had years of consistent caregivers, but we'll see. How am I doing now? Did I make it through that?
No, but you can hear what you're saying right now loud and clear.
Yeah, I like that, Rick.
I could hear most of it, Rick, and it did make sense.
Hey, Rhory.
Yeah.
Rhory was here, he's gone.
Well, he's
Heard most of it.
he's scheduled to be on a little bit later. I think he was just making sure he could come on, which he obviously demonstrated that he can. So
My
and
turn.
if in a little while we'll have Rhory on and we'll talk about some industry type stuff and his thoughts on everything. Alan, what else is going on out there? Let me see. Rick, give it another shot. Give it one more shot, man.
Oops, we lost him.
Okay.
Maybe not.
He can come back in and we can revisit this because there are some things around it that are still kind of questionable and weird. But I remember your feedback on another format was one way to combat this is to help encourage cannabis-friendly candidates winning in local offices.
It's the only way.
Yep.
In my opinion, with this decision, as long as this decision stands and it's, I can give some ammunition to people in the city of Warren that look at the city of Warren versus Busy, and I could probably, I don't know if I have a link to it, but I have it as a PDF, which is one case where Warren lost on a local caregiver ordinance, and it's a direct thing in the Court of Appeals. So that's direct precedent about a caregiver ordinance in the Court of Appeals against Warren's oppressive ordinances. So anybody who's facing that situation right now, I need to get that PDF to you if you're in the city of Warren. But otherwise, yeah, getting back to what you were segueing into about taking over city councils and municipal councils and township boards, that's what we have to do. We have to get cannabis people on those boards to either rescind those restrictive ordinances that are already on the books or to pass more cannabis-friendly ordinances, reasonable ordinances.
Right. And just so people know too, this conversation is going to be had and probably more in depthly. And maybe by then Alan, you'll be participating and have had a chance to see the oral arguments. But on Planet Green Trees Thursday night at 8:00, they'll start. There'll be a big segment on this also, and we'll get a little bit more into it. And Alan and others will have a chance to experience the oral arguments and more information on it for that conversation. But for now, we are still left like this was strange for this particular Supreme Court, and it left left us weirdly vulnerable after thinking that we kind of had some good decisions going here.
Yes. For anybody who wants to watch the oral arguments on the Michigan Supreme Court can go on YouTube. Michigan Supreme Court has its own YouTube page. And then you can search at the page, just putting in the name of the party and it'll come right up. But yes, the Supreme Court has normally done quite well on marijuana issues. And I was not expecting this. This totally caught me blindsided. And but we do have people, and we do have cannabis friendly boards that are, passing reasonable ordinances or no ordinances. I'd like to see an ordinance that says any cannabis related law enforcement is the lowest law enforcement priority. And that's a good one to have on the books in any jurisdiction, but we need to get friendly people there on the boards to do that.
Absolutely. So is there any other cases or scenarios politically? Well, I guess the one thing is there any thought on your end that the justices are being political? Or is this just a kind of in your opinion, kind of not as supportable of a decision as it could be, but they just didn't take that.
You know, generally in the courts, I see a bias of most every judge for the city or for the state, wherever you go. And it's tough to get them to rule against them. And they do sometimes, but it's pretty rare. And so in this case, we not only had Byron Township that was a party, you know, which is kind of like a city, but also it seemed to me, well, I don't see it in the opinion, but I thought there was a amicus brief filed by the Townships Association. So they had a lot of government putting pressure on them. I guess it's not really pressure, but the judges generally, if they side against the government too many times, they'll get voted down in the press. The press will attack them. And Judge Carnevale in Recorder's Court, for example, was a very friendly and reasonable judge, but the Free Press didn't like him. And at the next election, he got voted out, Dominic Carnevale. But everybody loved him. So anyway, that's that.
The industry has changed so much that we used to be such a kind of grassroots movement where everyone would get people to write letters to these judges in the Supreme Court or write to their representative. And I think that's kind of tailed off a little bit. And we're not in their ear as much as a movement as we used to be because of the changes in the industry going recreationally.
Yeah.
And commercial.
Sure. Yep. And my concern is kind of like if there's some political stuff there, the state seems to kind of not be interested in hanging on to the medical program.
Yeah. Well, this is just another stab at caregivers, but I just saw another case, which was not medical marijuana related to this, but it was where the prosecutor committed severe misconduct. It was very bad behavior, and it went up to the Michigan Supreme Court. But the trial court judge was Carl Malinga, who was a former prosecutor, and the defense attorney did a great job calling out the prosecutor on the misconduct, and Judge Malinga agreed on the record, but he was afraid to grant a mistrial. And it went up to the Supreme Court on this issue of the prosecutorial misconduct, and 6 out of the 7 judges did not want to grant leave, but one judge, Megan Kavanaugh, agreed with Carl Malinga, and she called out the prosecutor, and she wrote a great opinion citing a specific instances of misconduct. And I don't know if this is really political. I think it's more the judges want to see themselves reelected, and if they side against the government too many times, they won't get reelected, no matter how bad their decisions.
Yeah, well, I guess that's part of it. Seems like once somebody makes it on the courts, though, they have a hard time getting beaten out, although that has happened.
That's true. Unless the newspaper attacks somebody, usually getting on the bench, they can stay there as long as they want. Unfortunately, people don't know the records of judges when they vote for them. And that's one thing I hope when I post opinions online to the various formats that I do post at them, that when we get these bad decisions, people look at the judges who sign these opinions.
So any other decisions of somewhat recently or historically that still have some significance, or things that we're still like looking out for or should know about?
We had a really bad case last week, which was People versus Turner, which is what I would call an any amount case. And unfortunately, this young lady was driving and she made a left turn and she killed a motorcyclist. And on the scene, she admitted smoking marijuana earlier in the day. We don't know if the motorcyclist was speeding or anything else. We just know that he was killed and that she was smoking. We don't know anything about velocities, you know, if there was any relative fault in this, but the fact that she was smoking and she admitted it to the police was what tanked her defense. She was convicted of the worst possible offense for this crime, a manslaughter offense, which carries a 15-year felony, whereas it could have been a lesser offense, maybe say a 2-year misdemeanor, for example, or 5-year misdemeanor or less. But the fact was she got the max 15 years because of those two facts. She went to trial and she lost.
Yeah, that's bullshit.
Yeah. And the fact, you know, they had a blood test that said 5 nanograms, which was meaningless. Didn't really matter as far as the Court of Appeals. they said her admission on the scene was enough. So the take from this case is if you're in an accident and the police officer asks you anything about it, say, I'd like to talk with my attorney first. Don't admit anything. It's a very bad idea. You can take your chances if you think you were not at fault and someone else hits you. Maybe then those are the circumstances you want to talk. But if you have any feeling of guilt or responsibility, don't try and get it off your chest and think confession's good for the soul. It may feel good admitting it then, but don't. Save it. Because if she hadn't admitted that, she probably would not have been convicted of the 15-year offense. She would have probably got a compromise deal for a lower offense, or I don't even know if the jury would have convicted her for that. But she got 5 to 15 years, young girl in the prime of her life, and she gets out in 2024 for this, unless she can somehow get a COVID release early, which I haven't heard the prisons doing too much. The jails are doing it, but not the prisons. So that was a really bad case that came out last week from the Court of Appeals. And
that sucks. So that's obviously bullshit. Hopefully we get over those. Hopefully there's still some course of action she may have in the future to do something about that, because it remains one of these situations where it's just been internalized and accepted. Oh, there's cannabis involved, you're fucked. Because that's the way we've just operated for so long without really any good reasoning. Yeah. And that's kind of, this seems to be a case that just carries over with that, just internalization of it without really support for that, actually being a component in the thing. So before we wrap up here, Alan, anything else at large you want to convey to anybody, or
Well, the police are still doing pretext stops and still looking for drug dealers on the major arteries. And I had one other case that just came out that I already posted on the listserv, so you may remember it as U.S. versus Lott. And that was a case where somebody was stopped for driving slow in the left lane on I-75, and cars were actually passing him in the right lane. But if you listen to this, if you read between the lines on this opinion, you had an officer who was watching him in the middle of the freeway, according to the opinion. He was sitting in the median. So he really doesn't have that great a chance to observe his speed relative to the other vehicles. So that was the one thing I found suspicious of this case, and I thought that was a pretext stop. You never see police stopping people for driving too slow in the left lane. Anyway, this was a case from the Sixth Circuit where they did that and they got this guy. So I just wanted to warn people on I-75 about that, that they're still doing these drug interdictions. The other thing suspicious about this case was he didn't have to wait very long for a canine team to arrive. As you know, when they do a traffic stop, especially if they're going to let you go, they can't make you wait for a canine stop. That's what they call an unreasonable extension of the stop, and that violates a United States Supreme Court case called U.S. versus Rodriguez. But in here, this case, a canine came on the scene right away, and they sniffed his car, and they got him real good. So anyway, just be careful out there, because the police are still doing these interdiction stops, and they can make a pretext. I have no doubt in this case that this guy was tipped off, that he was watching for him in the left lane as he went by, and then he pulled out right behind him. So he had an informant, confidential informant, or some sort of undercover connection that was not disclosed in this case, is my opinion.
All right. Well, really appreciate it, Alan, and assume that you'll be part of the bigger discussion on the court hearing on or the decision by the Supreme Court on planting green trees on Thursday night.
All right.
And we will talk to you soon, man. We'll definitely have you back on here in the future and talk about this stuff. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks for coming on, Alan.
Yeah, man. Thanks for the great info.
Yes.
My pleasure.
Hey, Rick's trying to make it back on. Let's see how successful that is. Let's give him a shot. I think his audio's now connected. He's putting his headphones on. He's got a joint in his mouth, and he's about ready to speak.
How are we doing now?
Sounds great. Now start talking about something.
Something of great import. Any subject whatsoever.
Yeah, it's starting to do it a little bit.
Can I ask one question, Rick? Do you have any other devices that are hooked up to the same network you're on that you can
just not off? My day, baby.
Try to shut off your other devices, and that might free up some of the bandwidth.
Sometimes you don't want your
Hey, Rick.
your computer.
You're doing better than I am, Rick.
All right. So, Rick, attempt to chime in whenever you feel like it, and we'll all know that it's not always possible. And yeah, we'll just write it out from now on. That makes the most sense.
That's great.
Perfect. And John, can you hear me right now?
Yes.
All right, man. So just before we get to our next guest, who is standing by and successfully made it on Zoom, I think for one of the first times, which is cool. We know that people sometimes have a hard time with it. You were on Planet Green Trees last week, so you got the idea a little bit, John. So I just wanted to talk to you as you're hanging out with us here a little bit about Canapalooza and what's in your mind right now about it. That's for an August event.
What's in my mind? Well.
So your mind is to smoke that joint. Is that
Yeah.
is that what it's being said? Okay, that's all right. I got you.
Well, hey, I'm having a hard time following the show tonight more so than last week for some silly reason.
Good cannabis, apparently.
But if you can hear me on the peace, love, happiness, and COVID sucks, but we're going to get through it.
All right, man. You got a good setup there. It probably needs to be tweaked a little bit, and you got a good kid.
I need one of the kids to come help me. But
okay, and think about the headphone thing. That might help out. All right, so I'll tell you what. Why don't we'll just go right to our next guest, man, because he is standing by, and we got some stuff to talk about there. And maybe by the time we're wrapping up, Rick can come back in and give his thoughts on all the different things that we've been talking about today.
That'll be
Piecemeal
fun.
on that.
That'll be a good laugh, right? Everybody will chuckle at my expense again. That's wonderful. Let's plan that in the future. Sure.
Yeah, because right now he's limited to just talking about things that are not relevant. that comes through loud and clear. But hey, we've got an industry person. In fact, one of our kind of originals in this Michigan movement, which has included business and activism and advocacy, and he's been there supporting things and helping out. And he took over a place early on, and was one of the mainstays. Is one of the mainstays in Ann Arbor. It's a great place, Arborside, and he was a sponsor for our digital hash bash, of course, which we really appreciate, and has helped out with many things. He's got a great place in Ann Arbor. Rhory Gould, can you hear us?
Jamie, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
All right. We can, man. It's working.
All right.
I see the Trailblazer Award next to you. I'm one of the only few other people that can claim to have one of those too.
That's you and Rick.
Yeah, we were down in Washington, D.C. together for that, and that was a good time. We represented Michigan along with Josh Kiesler. Yep.
Yeah, that was a great time. I was just going through the pictures the other day.
So, man, you've had a unique journey here with this industry, and you're still kind of on it a little bit. You're working with the system, getting your license. I know that there was there's some hoops to jump through and all that's going down, but you're sitting in kind of a unique position. And what is your status and what's going on with Arborside at the moment?
What's up, Rory?
What's up?
You're with the Cabbage crew here. You got Jim Salame and Colin MacDougall and attorney Allen Peisner's hanging on, and of course Rick Thompson, who is limited with what he can do, but he's there. His presence is definitely around.
I'm unlimited, man.
There you go. And so what's happening, man?
He's unlimited. That's right. Rick's never limited.
For some reason, technology is keeping him from doing nothing more than not participating. But we'll see.
I was trying to get everyone on the screen on my computer so I can see all of you guys.
You can do that stuff. It's Alan's got it down. He's got all the different little things down that you need to do because Zoom has been becoming so much more a part of a lot of our lives, or Skype, or this type of thing anyway, since the quarantine has gone down. And I've just done many different things like this. But what's going on at Arborside, man? And what's going on with your pursuit in the industry?
Right now, we are able to deal with caregivers, and we're still open.
Yeah, that's a unique position. Do you know of other places that are still hanging on to that?
There might be one or two. There's not many.
Right.
We're under appeal, and because you were there helping me.
There was a hearing, and I was a witness along with Robin Schneider from the Michigan
Right.
Cannabis Industry Association. Yeah.
So the MRA turned us down for some silly things. Kind of like we were in front of Bailey, and Bailey's gone. So we got turned down by the MRA. That was the first one. We appealed that. We went in front of an administrative law judge. That's the time you were there. And he turned us down too. But then we went to the circuit court. And in front of the circuit court judge, she kept us in business. So right now, it looks like we're going to get licensed once this COVID is over. We will get our license, and then we will get our rec license. It's just taking so much time.
It is, man.
A lot of fighting.
You know, it's not going to be part of your future, obviously, as the industry unfolds and just the licensed people are supplying the, inventory. But there are a lot of people going to Arborside. I know personally, because you're still working with a lot of caregivers, and a lot of us who've been around doing this for a long time know that that's where the more consistently better cannabis is.
Yeah, I love the caregivers. They're the ones that we wouldn't be here talking if it wasn't for the caregivers.
Can I ask-
Really wouldn't. They supported us from the get-go. Now it's time to support them.
Go ahead,
Can I ask-
Alan.
Oh, I just had a quick question, Rory, and that is, if we'd like to visit you and sample some of your fine cannabis, do we need to call ahead? Do we go to your website first and place an order and call ahead? I mean, or can we still come inside the store?
Right now, it's just a curbside, so nobody comes in the store.
Okay,
So everybody's just gonna park and they call, and then we come out with their order.
but how do we
you
know?
think for first-time members? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah, but how would we know? If I've never been there before, how would I know what to order?
How would you know what to order? Or
Yeah.
you go right on our menu.
Is everything on Weed Maps? You using Weed
Yeah.
Maps? Okay,
Yeah,
Okay,
that's one way.
okay, very good. Thank you.
And anybody up north, same thing for Botanical Company.
Botanical Company of Tawas.
Yeah, there you go. John and a lot of people up there are familiar because that's their area. So,
yeah, we're dealing with the best caregivers too. Top quality meds at our place, all around.
no question
Four
about it.
shelves, 4 shelves to pick from. The only problem right now is you can't see those shelves because you can't come in the store.
It is strange, but how has business been? A lot of the reports out there have been that the cannabis industry is still moving along pretty good, even though the changes and how the interactions are with the patients and the customers and stuff like that. Have you been experiencing good flow of people coming through?
Yes, everybody's been very cool with what's going on. Here we are doing curbside service, a thing that would have been totally illegal before this. You weren't allowed, if you were caught doing something out in the driveway in the parking lot, forget it. You'd lose your chance at a license.
So I'm wondering if I never understood why drive-through was specifically prohibited. I never really got much of a great answer on that. And now that we're doing this so much, I'm just wondering at least, or why for sure after, medical decided to do that, okay, for whatever, somebody had a reason.
Mhm.
Maybe not, maybe so that it doesn't, so it seems more medical and not like a drive-through liquor thing, parallel comparison type of way of purchasing something to use for, to get high or whatever. I'm not sure really what the thought press was, but we did not prohibit it in the MRTMA, yet the state continued that prohibition from the medical program to that. Just wondering if through this process and after doing all this curbside and stuff, what are kind of remaining reasons there would be, at least for MRTMA, to not be able to do a drive-through service if somebody could set that up at their store. I mean, I think there's a reason that pharmacies and banks do it. I mean, there's efficiency and there's security.
And it makes it easier for people that are disabled. They don't have to get out of their car. It looks like a great thing.
Well, we'll see what happens with that, but I never got too much of the word on the thinking of why that was excluded, other than it just made too much sense, which of course we've seen our our decision makers go against the grain of reason many times.
A lot of decisions that were made early on really didn't make sense then, and in retrospect, they make even less sense now.
That was loud and clear, and that was substantive. We might be on a good pace here now.
I personally think that with what's going on, that medical should be the only ones that are being able to be open right now, because that's essential medical. Rec is not essential, but there's places that do both, obviously. But really, I think it should be medical right now with what's going on. But that's just my personal.
Yeah, well, the problem with that is that people who aren't registered as a medical patient might want to show up and they're 21 and over and buy it for the reasons for their health and well-being, for a medical purpose or condition or something like that. So it would be medical under those circumstances.
Jamie, even if it's rec, it's medical. You're right. It's always medical. It's always been medical.
Happy 420, everybody.
Where's the 420?
I think he'd light one up or something. I wasn't looking at the moment.
It's 420 in Chicago.
Yep.
That's
420.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
It's 420 somewhere.
It's also 420 in Michigan on the western half of the Upper Peninsula.
A little piece of Michigan is in a different time zone. Yeah. Yeah, play it safe and just always make it 420.
Yeah, this whole month's been 420.
That's true. And it's, it is kind of ironic. People have said it. We did the hash bash in this month, all virtual in quarantine, did the 420 in this month, and this whole month is part of this pandemic scenario where we're all trapped in our house, and many of us who use cannabis and have it around are sitting in our house smoking a lot of cannabis for the month of 420. Whether that
you guys did a great thing for 420 also. The virtual hash bash that you had, and you guys are always on top of stuff. I got to give my thanks to you and Rick.
Well, and thank you for helping to sponsor it too, man. That was very helpful. And as a result, I haven't said it lately, but I want to say close about $2,200 or somewhere.
You guys did an awesome job with that. I need to get better at this.
And of course, John and Cannapalooza were great sponsors for this too. But we raised, I'm going to say something in the neighborhood of $2,200 for the hash bash. The committee to have a little seed for when it can get going next time. It might not even be this fall, unfortunately, but possibly. And let's hope. And then also over $500 designated for the John Sinclair Foundation. So some good things came out of that digital hash bash, and Rick has gone through and made these individual segments from a lot of those appearances, and that has gotten a lot of attention, and it just keeps on going on. We're still for the next few weeks going to have highlights from that, whether that's as you guys who came on and sponsored, and we had the Cannapalooza video. We've had other people and showed their segment on here and then talked to them about it and got a little bit more in depth. We're going to continue to do that. Next week, we're actually on another holiday. Of course, we're getting into May, but we have the Cinco de Mayo edition. We'll have some fun partying time on that day too. Probably continue the discussion on the COVID stuff. That's going to be ongoing. We'll probably have some new stuff to say by then about it, but we'll party a little bit too and give some tribute to Cinco de Mayo. You doing anything for Cinco de Mayo at your store, Rhory?
Not yet. We haven't planned for Cinco de Mayo. My mind was on, for hash bash, we were going to have Mila, the hash queen, in, and we were going to have Danny Danko in to give a seminar like we do pretty much every year. Teach people about making hash and teach people how to grow.
Well, yeah, you've brought in many people over the years. Ed Rosenthal a few times, and then we oftentimes, they become part of Hash Bash too because they're there and they're notable. And we did have Danny Danko on the virtual Hash Bash. He came on pretty late, but it was good. And he mentioned Arborside and all the support that you've given him over the years and everything. And
he actually said he bought the airline tickets and had to refund them, but he was holding on to the money in hopes that he could buy for next year.
Yeah. Well, if we have it in the fall, if we luck out, that'd be great. I'll have Mila and Danny come in the fall.
Perfect. And you go
They'll be coming 2021.
the Jubilee, the 50th. That's
Right.
That one should be. Well, they're all cool. But this one, a couple of years in and 50th and all that stuff, it's should be primed for a pretty good party as long as we can actually do it.
Yeah. We've had several people in for Hash Bash. Jorge, who was a K also from Tricombe.
Oh, I remember Kay. That was some interesting stuff, man. I mean,
that was great. That was with Chong, breakfast with Chong that day too.
Yeah. Early and often, that dude has done the way more in-depth research before most other people on all the other supporting components in the cannabis plant, all the terpenes and flavonoids and stuff that we talk about. He's gone to work with like scientists in France who work with perfumes and things like that and isolate certain terpenes and understand them, and the whole thing is much larger discussion in and of itself. But that was a great one.
Right. When we talk about cannabis, we always talk about THC, but that's just one of like 60 psychoactive chemicals, and it's the most understudied.
And
plant.
THCP was just discovered, so we put a lot of stock in the THC, but there's other stuff there too. So, and you also had Robert Platzorn.
Yeah, and Kyle Cookman too.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bobby Platchorn. Yeah.
Yeah.
We've
So
known a lot of people definitely over the years. We have.
And the scene there in Ann Arbor and the Hash Bash time and all that kind of stuff is well known to the community at large. And you go around, we're under weird circumstances right now, but you typically go around the country and get involved in a lot of events and have a presence there and
teach people.
Yeah, and work with. Sometimes you're on the seminars and doing speeches and stuff like that, and other times you're there just dealing with a lot of those primaries from the national kind of cannabis scene.
The national scene,
yeah. So I mean, we are Michigan is a legitimately huge part of this whole national scene at this point.
Oh, definitely.
Established our place, and
I love the fact that people could come to these seminars and learn from these masters of growing and of this industry and teaching everybody, so everybody could learn and everybody can up their game, and it makes out great for everybody, for the patients, for us, for them, for everybody all around.
For everybody.
Yeah.
Actually, this is a side topic, but I remember being at the hotel, whatever it's called now, where the Hash Bash Cup has been.
Yeah, Wyndham. It used to be the Clarion, I think, and now it's
okay, so probably when it was the Clarion at the Wyndham, you had Ed Rosenthal at that little theater area thing at the back of it.
Oh, that's great.
Little stage and stuff, and he was there during that presentation. I got a text or an email, and I forgot what year it was and all that kind of stuff, but I do remember. Okay, that was the first time that we went over 50% for support for marijuana legalization nationally. Because during that presentation, I got the text or the the email, whatever that had that recent poll in it that demonstrated that we finally got over 50% support, majority support. And we've been moving the needle forward ever since then. It's never really dropped, I don't think, too much, and we've only gained support every year. It always does. And there's room for, I mean, obviously medical got up into the 90 percentile at some point, and legalization keeps on growing. And the more people see it in action and all of the concerns and the issues that people believe are, part of spawned by the presence of this industry, when they don't take place, we're able to move forward a little bit more.
It's growing. Everything is growing.
Go ahead, Alan. What you got?
That's a real good word to use.
Right. But you're talking about, I just wanted to mention, you said 50% or more at that point. By 2008, we had 63% of the Michigan voters vote for medical marijuana.
Right. That's for medical. The poll I was talking about was for full legalization support, national poll. So the first time majority was then.
What year was that?
What year was that, Rhory?
I think it was 2013.
Okay.
You said we had Ed in. So
13 sounds right.
13 and 14 and that in.
Well, if history's any guide, we'll be getting federal legalization soon. 100 years ago, women were fighting for the right to vote, and they had the right to vote established in individual states, but not federally. And but as enough states came on board giving them the right to vote, then finally it passed federally with the 19th Amendment. And I see something happening similar to that here as well. Whether it takes a constitutional amendment or not, I'm not sure.
Hey, so Rory, why don't you let people know a little bit, about your location, what you got going on? Maybe I know you got some other people involved there. Alex, some shout outs to some people who are getting good support for you.
Oh, definitely. My crew, Alex and Dom, amazing guys, both of them. Very, I'm very glad that Alex has been with me since 2011, the end of 2011. And Dom has been with me for like 6 years now.
Yeah.
And then we got a crew of about 13 other people.
Yep, it's a good thing it's gone on for a long time too. It's part of the
It's been a lot, it really has. And it's stressful, but it's all worth it. It's all worth it. I remember saying to myself that I'm going to give my life to this, to having cannabis legalized all over the place, because nobody should be getting arrested for cannabis, period. End of story.
Well, look at the four of us gathered here. Jim from Ohm, Jamie from Third Coast, myself from Big Daddy's, and of course Rhory from Arborside. These are four of the very earliest names in cannabis distribution in Michigan. Still kicking. It's great. It's a great this blood here. Jamie's laughing. I must be doing badly.
You eked it out. And as soon as you said Jamie's laughing, of course, it went back to being clear. And but we got
the days of Mac.
Yep, Mac, Michigan Association of Compassion Centers, the first industry association. That was important. Yeah, we introduced the thing that eventually became the FFLA, or those MMFLA, although most of us don't really like all the details in it. Was started by Mac. We worked with MPP before they kind of decided to take the route of selling out language. Yeah. I'm not sure what they're doing now that Rob's not there, but that's what they were doing, most recently. But before that point, Karen O'Keefe came out and met with many of us and had discussions all over the state, really, and then put together kind of our Michigan way of doing it, which was the caregivers supplying the inventory. And then maybe there could be some commercial places to help, offset inventory, but it was going to be the other way around, not relying on major, huge commercial operations and then a few caregivers on the side. We were looking for it to be the exact opposite of that, but of course that didn't win out. Maybe in hindsight, that was kind of naive of us to think that we'd be able to pull that off, but we started that process.
Caregivers do all the best. They do. They bring in the best products.
Yep.
Consistently it's been going on for like 10 years now, a decade.
A lot of people have gotten really good at growing their style and their strains, and
they've learned from the best, and they're really, to begin with, Michigan growers are great. The Michigan people a lot are farmers, and this has been going on for a long time. And now,
before the laws came into play, and some of those people decided to come out, from their basements at that time, and they already had a clue and already had some good genetics and that type of stuff. And we got some stuff moving early and often in the state, and I think we got good recognition for that, nationally too. So, is there anything you want to leave us with, Rory, before we wrap up this segment?
I just like to leave us with let's get all the states legal.
Hell yeah.
Let's get it legal all over the country. Change the stupid scheduling that's really messing up. Being able to deal with banks directly. Let's get all this stuff done in the next couple of years. That's really how I would like to leave it.
Right on.
Expungement.
Hopefully Alan's right too.
And I forgot. Expungement for all those in jail right now. Get them out. Nobody should be in jail for cannabis. No one.
Right on. Yeah. just like really, really frustrating to know that many people are in there for activity that is regularly done all day long with,
All over the place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
and we went from being that type of felonious activity to being an essential, business.
That's business, right?
That's good, but we still need to shore up all that other stuff too, that get the people
Let
out.
me ask one question before I go.
Sure.
How many states right now are medical? I think it's 40. I'm not sure.
Rick may know. I don't know what it is off the top of my head, actually.
There's 42 states have some form of medical cannabis. Most of them CBD oil, or some of them rather CBD oil, but most of them have full blown. So 42.
42. The number keeps changing and it keeps getting higher, so I forgot.
Right. No, I know and these different variations of it too happen. Some are not even that functional, but at least you can say that they're one of the states that have done something.
Exactly.
Getting
They'll get
higher
on
is
board.
good.
All the court cases that we're dealing with, if it went federally legal and changed to scheduling or descheduled, all those would be,
Mhm.
nothing.
Yeah.
So much better.
All right. So, Rick, I don't know. I'm feeling like taking a chance on getting some of your input here and see how far we can
Oh
get.
no.
Because the show's been missing that tone and that input right at the right time. I've had to try to carry it, and people have been upset.
No one's been upset, Jamie. Come on.
Yeah, let's hear it from Rick.
The reality is, yeah.
The reality is we're
We
gonna
love
have
you,
a
Jamie.
So
Thank
funny.
you.
So hilarious.
Rick, you
No.
should come over here.
On the downhill slope. We're on the downhill slope. It'll be over soon. Stay safe. That's all.
Stay safe. That's all. So had he been able to speak this entire time, it would have been over with pretty quickly early on too, I guess. But it's all good.
Maybe.
You there? Are you still trying to talk? I'm sorry. You there?
Oh, me?
Well, actually, I was trying to see if I think Rick's
Jamie,
gone.
I just lit up my layer cake.
Yeah, you talking to me?
You talking to me? Hey, what do you got
Looks
there,
like you all lit up.
Rory? That actually is interesting. A post-interview discussion on your cannabis. Is that a wedding cake?
We got wedding cake right now, but we got the pre-rolls of this layer cake. That's amazing.
Layer cake. Okay.
Oh my God.
Oh,
It's
there's
so
some wedding
cool.
cake here.
Yeah, I would like that. I would like some of that.
Okay. Well,
I might have to do a Arborside curbside run here pretty soon.
Jamie, I still owe you one fatty for posting that case on the listserv before me. That's a bounty I have.
Sure.
When somebody posts a case before me that cites the medical marijuana actors related to that, so I owe you a fatty, and I was supposed to give it to you at Hash Bash, but well, that didn't happen.
That didn't happen. That's on reserve then.
So, but I mean, a fatty of chronic, just like this.
Much appreciated for when it does actually happen. I'll take it too and smoke it by myself.
Good.
I owe you a
Yeah.
fatty means different things coming from different people.
He was very specific and showed a demonstration of what the actual joint would look like when I get it and all that kind of stuff. So I felt comfortable and safe with continuing that conversation.
Context is everything, and so I don't want to convey the wrong context with anything that would,
We don't
might give
allow
somebody
dick
the wrong
jokes here.
idea.
Yeah, dick jokes are excluded from our vocabulary on this show.
Okay, that's a very good idea. I hope I didn't make a penis awful Freudian slip.
yeah, it's a fun thing. I like smoking with other people. You know what I mean? And now we got to smoke alone.
So it's all about this. So Chuck Ream, who was formerly involved in the operation at the location where Arborside is for a little while before you took it over as Arborside, always does. Everybody has their own joint thing, especially while in certain circumstances. So there's no passing around of a joint to see stuff like that. But just as an aside, talking about the history of everything, that's one of the few locations that was raided in Washtenaw County at any point. It was before you took it over, of course, but there's only been there's been like three raids in over the last 12 years or so of
Well,
this
it was
type of
two
thing?
that day. That chainsaw
Oh,
guy.
four or five.
And
Yeah,
then,
okay. That's right.
Who else? Harry got raided once.
Yep. Herbal Solutions and
Herbal-
the shop in Depot,
So that's
or
five.
not Depot Town, but shop in Ypsilanti
That's
on
5.
Cross. Yeah, 5 over the years, and that's in an area that's friendly. So those areas that are not friendly got nailed a lot more than that, and people got
Yeah.
to a
I
lot
remember
more.
opening up, that's one thing that I was always nervous about, getting that phone call for the first couple of years. But
I've experienced that same nervousness. We didn't mention when we were going around talking about all the participation in places too. I guess we should have mentioned that, and then Rick did at the beginning of the show that Colin has a connection with Bloom. He's not there working right now, but he was up until all this stuff, and that came on a little bit later on, a couple of waves in, but still with people who were of the original set, and gave it that feel and became kind of a good place too, and established for a long time now, and it's worked its way into the new commercial world. We should just add that on since Rick brought that up about the rest of them.
These
Don't
are
worry about me. I'm not as
our guild.
Who's that saying something? I'm sorry.
I said our guild that we had.
The
Ann
Ann
Arbor
Arbor Medical Cannabis Guild was
Yes.
a very important organization, man. There's no question about it. It dealt with one area kind of, but it helped out statewide and helped to spawn other kind of guilds in different cities too that helped out in their own areas and statewide too. So that was a good one.
Made us look organized early on, I think.
Yeah.
It was really helpful.
It was, and before at one point, really in its really early formation, I was actually kind of a part of it. Ypsilanti places were kind of allowed on the side to be a part of it and stuff, and then it kind of shored up a little bit, and I got the axe, but somehow remained.
That was for different reasons.
Jamie.
The whole rule change was designed around getting me out.
Right. I tried to get you back in.
I was, every time though there was something that I needed to address that group with or whatever, I was welcomed in there and was able to give a presentation or have the discussion with people or whatever. So it all worked out.
It was a great group. It really was.
We tried something in Ypsi, but it didn't really take off. But Lansing got a guild going that had some success, political success.
Even Detroit got a guild going. I remember, but I don't know how long it lasted.
Right. Easier said than done to get a group of people to work together and
that's
move in the same direction.
We had to work together to get to where we are now.
Yeah. There's some good contact with city council in Ann Arbor too. They're very open.
Oh yeah.
Back then with Sabre Briere as well. And
they come to our meetings, talk to us.
And Ann Bannister took the place of Sabre Briere when she moved out to California. And she's actually coincidentally just, an old acquaintance from me hanging around Ann Arbor and partying over the years and that kind of stuff. And she comes in with her own style and her own approach to issues and that kind of stuff, but also good for our issue, good for cannabis. And she was participant in the digital hash bash also. And there's more than her on that council, obviously, that are open to a lot of stuff. And we're lucky in Ypsi too, to have some really good people. Annie Somerville, who was part of digital hash bash and on this show too. It's a good Washtenaw County when the prosecutor had, early on decided that, he would publicly state that he doesn't particularly care for the activity, but he didn't really do anything. He didn't make it a priority or go after us or that kind of thing. Those raids that happened through other channels. A set of them happened from an investigation that started in Wayne County and spilled over into Washtenaw County, and it was some jurisdictional task force from there that came over but the one that took place where Arborside is now, when it was Medmar, was LawNet, which is the Washtenaw County task force.
Right.
And I forgot what the issues were, but it didn't amount to much ultimately. As far as legal repercussions go. I'm sure it was a hassle for everybody and very scary, and some people have PTSD from it, and there was a lot of money that had to be paid out for lawyers and courts and stuff like that. But all of them made it through. Harry went through a little bit, but working with Denny and others got all of his stuff totally dismissed, if I remember that correctly.
Denny Hayes, you're referring to.
Denny Hayes,
attorney.
legendary attorney, legendary
Yeah,
cannabis
there's
attorney.
somebody to mention that we all love. Denny Hayes.
I mean, in that area in particular, on those issues, he's been the man for many years.
Yes.
Yeah.
Great guy. Great guy to talk.
One of the original, he was somehow, I don't know the exact connection, the exact story, but somehow involved in the Johnson Clare stuff in the 70s.
Yes.
And he brought in, speaking of Mac, he brought in, who was it? God, I can't think of his name right now. Pretty well-known lawyer, Buck comes to mind. But he was directly involved with the Johnson Clare case. And he brought him into a Mac meeting, that discussion a few years ago now. Just reminded me of that. Big part of the history. And of course, Camorran Law. And we had Michael on last week, and he didn't get to finish because his kid came in and needed to be attended to. But we were talking about the status of the lawsuit in which Johnson Clare, Michigan Normal, Josie Scoggin, and some others are plaintiffs in suing the state to under the state's controlled substance list to deschedule cannabis. And that's kind of stuck right now. You know what, Alan, do you have a quick 30-second status on that case? Do you happen to know?
Yeah, it was, I believe the Court of Claims dismissed it on summary disposition, meaning that the case was denied before trial, before taking witnesses' testimony, and I think it's in the Court of Appeals. I believe Michael's got a case pending there. It's my understanding.
Well, that's basically as far as he got, but as far as like knowing what kind of like real life it has and what we might be able to expect out of the courts at this point, I'm not sure. But I think part of the discussion too was that this is this MMFLA based, like this stuff was put in before even MRTMA was part of the argument?
Yes.
Right. So like it's even stronger now.
Right. Well, the idea is that it can't be a Schedule I substance if the state is licensing people to sell it and taxing it. And
I'm telling caregivers, I mean, at one point anyway, just throw it in your car and take it to someplace and get it into the commercial market.
right.
That's how we
So that was the point of that lawsuit, was to force the Board of Pharmacy to remove cannabis from Schedule I. And as I said, it's the case, the judge didn't think much of the case, is a simple way to say it, but it could still come back if the Court of Appeals revives the case and sends it back to the Court of Claims. In that case, it would be great. Excuse me.
That's a cannabis cough, most likely.
Yes, it would be great. But it would be great if we could get cannabis off Schedule I, because we need to do a lot more research on it. It has a lot of potential, and a lot of research has been limited because it's on Schedule I.
And by all means, it should not be there.
Right.
No, yeah, it certainly would help out if that was done at our own state and federally. So Rick is trying a new location, a new spot. You want to try this out, Rick? See if we can get something in before it's too late again.
I don't really have a lot of confidence this is going to work very well. I tried to move closer to my internet source. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. No. How's that doing? Are we all right?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're great.
You're right.
All right. Here comes the good stuff. It'll fuzz out any second now. So the reality is, on a worldwide level, prior.
Yeah.
No.
You gotta go right for the substance, man. Right when you get the first shot instead of.
It's too much.
Oh, well. We lost you, Rick.
So some days, there he is.
Cannabis was on.
There he is. I heard cannabis for sure. So we stuck with a good line. Oh well, some days the internet doesn't.
I'm done.
There you go. You're kind of in there a little bit, Rick, but not that clear. Some days the internet doesn't work some places, man. It's part of this.
That's probably half my problem.
So that's where he is, but he's maintained a strong spirit and has made it back on and has gotten a lot of good stuff in here on the sides today. So hopefully it's all better for next week or any other show. I should mention that Rick and I are going to be on a show tomorrow at 1:00, Facebook Live, maybe even Instagram Live too, with Grow Green. And I'm not sure how long, but for the longest, that's a great place, by the way. For the longest time, they would put on these events once a month, or it was like caregiver night, or I forgot exactly what they called it, but they would have many vendors in there from all over the country, and they would get more in depth on their products and do presentations on them. And Rick and I would try to offer updates on what's going on in cannabis, and let people know what's going on. And a lot of it was during the legalization campaign, so progress on the legalization campaign, and every one of their great expos, which is a spring and a fall expo. And in fact, this year the spring expo is going to be virtual. It's going to be a similar format to what we did with the digital hash bash. And Alan just showed a Grow Green lighter, and we are going to discuss some of the stuff we discussed here today and other things. And there's some Q&A part of it. And we're looking forward to that with PJ from Grow Green, Michigan. And I think we're also going to participate in their virtual spring expo also, and looking forward to that. That's a place that we kind of, speaking from a third coast kind of perspective, that we kind of grew up with a little bit. They came around a similar time. They were part of our very first expo that we had. Alan's holding up another Grow Green, Michigan piece of swag, piece of promo material. And we had this expo at the Marriott early 2010, I want to say January 2010, and they were one of the vendors, and they had a small store. Now they're amidst the largest in the country, and still doing a lot of things that are really cool. Those events that they put on are just really nice. Those are known industry. Those are industry standards. I mean, other places do them, but and I participated in them, and they're great. But but Grow Green's got that one down. They're more consistent and a little bit better with it. Alan, are you waving your hand?
Yeah, I just wanted to add about Grow Green that if anybody has a question about cannabis cultivation and any aspect of it, whether it's from the beginning or to the end, that is the place to visit. They know it, and they can help you.
They hire really good people there, man. I mean, and some of them go on to be in parts of other, related industry things or whatever, and work for some other aspect and that type of stuff. And people come in, and the whole family and people who have been through there and everything are just amidst, some of our better industry experts. They really are. That place is just a central location for good information and good prices, good product. I mean, I don't get anything for it. It's just true.
No, you're right. They have the best. That's what originally got my attention, was that people said they had the best prices, but it's also the quality of the people that they have there and the quality of the products, that they're not only good products, but they're good prices, and they do the job. And then you tell them what you need, what you're having difficulties with, and they'll steer you to the right department and the right person. Whether the problem was with cloning or seed germination, in the beginning of your grow, or trimming it at the end, they'll sell you a trimmer.
Sure. Yep. All that stuff. And there are some other really great places. I don't mean to leave anybody out, but there's a certain, standard here and longevity that they have doing this stuff that is unique and should be noted. But I love a lot of the other places that do it too. It's just a good idea to help the clientele get more information, more specific information on what's going on, and to add Rick and myself into that mix and get a little more well-rounded idea of what's happening in the world of cannabis was always a good idea. And I loved participating in those things, and hopefully that will resume too. So we're getting kind of toward the end. We've kind of gotten through here, I think, with a lot of great information and good subject matter. Again, a lot of this stuff is going to find itself on, and in some cases, like the court case, more in depthly on Planet Green Trees with Michael Camoran Thursday night at 8:00. And we'll be back here next week, probably talking about more of it again, and the COVID stuff for sure. Maybe some developments on what's going on with some of these court cases and stuff like that. But there's always something to talk about. We'll have something new then, and we'll see where we are in this weird, set of circumstances that we're in, this new normal. But before we go out, let's spin around and just see if anybody wants to lay on any words of wisdom. Maybe Rick will even somehow get back in right before the end. Any words of wisdom or any other? I know there's no physical gathering event that's going to get announced, but there's a bunch of these Zoom things. So if anybody's got any more of those things to to talk about.
Gotcha.
I'm getting nailed by a bee here, so
Cannabis worldwide in some way, shape, form will happen.
that's awesome, man. I wanted to talk to you about that. We don't have a great setup today. I'm glad you
No,
said
I
that.
can't get this thing. I'm gonna have to get the.
Okay, well, you know what? I like to hear that. That'll be a cliffhanger.
Also, I guess enjoy the last
Nikki
couple
to come
days
and
with
help
the
me get over to her place and do it there.
Okay. All right, John. Thanks a lot, man.
Everybody stay safe out there.
All right, man.
Enjoy the last couple days.
Thank
of
you,
420.
Rick, Jamie. You guys are awesome. Good to hear.
That's
I was
awesome,
just
man.
gonna say that,
Let's get Colin. Let's get Colin. He's trying to
Colin.
get something in. I happen to know what it feels like when people try to talk over you several times, so I have some empathy for Colin.
Every
Go ahead.
time I chime in, somebody else.
Good to see you too, Roy.
Yeah, it's unintentional, man. Come on, Colin. What do you got?
I said enjoy the last couple days of 420 the month.
Yep, that is true. So smoke up if you can, because it's more special if you smoke during this time frame than it is if you smoke when it gets to be first day of May.
But every day is 420.
That's true. It's always
Fantastic.
420 somewhere. Alan, you got anything?
No, thank you for having me on the program. It's been great.
Thanks for sticking around, man, and participating with us a little bit. We're a little light on crew today, but we got through a lot of good information.
I was just say I had a crazy idea for any entrepreneurs out there listening in the future that we're listening right now via what's called a sound card on a computer. They call it a sound blaster in the old days. Could somebody please invent a smell blaster so we could share some of these aromas?
I think that, hey, don't be surprised, man, if that happens.
It'll happen one day.
Yeah. Hey, so Derek, you got anything to wrap us up? I don't think Rick made it back on. I think everybody else has had their piece.
I just wanted to say, really great show. This one's for Gertie.
Yeah, my old gal, my dog at 13 and a half years had to be put down yesterday, so it's sad. Don't mean to leave with a super bummer here. She did have a great life, and it was a humane decision, but it's never easy.
Hey,
I
I just wanted to bring up Bicycle Day, and we also had Earth Day this past week.
and Mushroom Day was last week. Yeah.
Fantasticfungi.com. You can probably find a way to get to their stream they had all day for Mushroom Day.
And I want to have Julie. I'm going to have Julie Barron on here soon too. If not,
Perfect.
next couple of weeks with the next to talk about this more in depthly. And of course, Colin and Jim are both part of Decriminalized Nature in Ann Arbor also. So that's a good conversation. We get everybody going on that. We didn't address it today. We usually do at least a little bit, but we'll make a nice chunk of a show about that in a couple of weeks.
For sure.
Cool. So I think that's good, man. I'm sorry that Rick technologically didn't hang with us as much as we would have liked him, as much as he would have liked to. Really appreciate John and Alan and Rhory coming on, and the rest of the Cabbage crew who could make it today. Shelly popped on for a minute. Deborah will be back with us next week, I'm sure. She's really busy this week. So that's it, man. Thanks. Great show. Really appreciate everybody's involved. Jazz Cabbage Cafe.
Be safe, everybody.
Right on.